Doctors in the Tigray capital Mekelle say they are seeing rising numbers of malnourished children. Most of them are coming from outside the city where the fighting is ongoing.
There has been an 83% increase in children with moderate malnutrition over the past month. This is showing the exponential increase in the malnourished children and mothers, and clearly shows the deteriorating trend that is continuing till this day. So long as there is no intervention, this trend can only continue to deteriorate.
The hospital is now full of worried mothers.
قعدت نقرنا سرح خطيان هازقن سرح اللي تخلي الله نفسه قلني سودا.
These children are victims of the war between the government forces and its allies against the Tigray People's Liberation Front or TPLF. The conflict began in November when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed deployed his troops following an attack on a military base in Mekelle. Since then, millions of people have been displaced. Many of them farmers who lost their land as a result of the war. Abrash is one of them. She used to run a sesame farm with her husband. They were attacked by militia and forced to leave. In big cities and towns, some food is available to buy, but most people here have lost their livelihoods, so they can no longer afford basic necessities.
شيطنا نشتن نركم بي قال انديت نتشجر حواتنا نيو اندي نجر نرخو نيو نحنا جن منهم زي عنا سلنا أتي منهم قد أتينا اندي انت قد حونا نيو اندي تقوم يسوي اندي نجرين نيو.
Another generation, another hunger crisis caused by war, something many Ethiopians are now a stranger to. In the 1980s, the then government starved millions in Tigray as part of its war against the TPLF, then a rebel movement. By 1991, the TPLF had taken power, but they also used the same tactic, man-made hunger. In 2008, Channel 4 News investigated how the TPLF was using food as a weapon in the east of the country. Now, it's 2021. Is history repeating itself yet again?
Jamal Osman. Well, earlier I spoke to Alex Duval, who has produced a significant report, Starving Tigray, for the World Peace Organization. I began by asking him and putting it to him that history was repeating itself in Ethiopia.
Indeed. I mean, for many of us, the Great Famine of 1984-85 was a pivotal moment, and also a moment of shame because the world was not prepared to acknowledge a famine until those terrible pictures of starving children were actually on the nightly news. And over the last years, so much has been done to prevent this sort of thing from happening again. We have famine early warning systems. And now what we're seeing is the deliberate use of starvation as a weapon of war.
Well, how do we respond?
Well, the most immediate response is the humanitarian response. The next thing is a ceasefire. And then we need to expose what is happening. We need to really document this crime because it is a starvation crime.
But how do you locate who is driving this? I mean, are their names known?
The most egregious violator here is the government of Eritrea. Its troops are all over Tigray. They are systematically ransacking and looting down to the smallest things. In the town of Adwa, we have eyewitnesses who describe how they destroyed a factory. And soldiers went along the main streets, not only breaking open shops, but even breaking open those little boxes that shoe shine boys, where they have their cloths and their polish and their brushes, down to that granularity of an attempt to grind people down to utter poverty.
But Eritrea is a country that went through war itself and suffered grievously in that period, and yet now is visiting it on people in Tigray. I mean, what does this say of these people, and what does it say of the United Nations that they've not called them to account?
Well, it is a deep tragedy of Eritrea that the ideals of those who struggled and fought and suffered so much for liberation have seen their hopes and dreams disappointed by the dictatorship of Isaias Afwerki. And similarly, in Ethiopia, we see the hopes of combining the progress of the developmental state over the last 30 years, reducing hunger. We have seen those also reduced to ashes.
Who is taking a lead on trying to do something about this?
Sadly, the African Union has failed dismally, and Ireland brought the issue to the UN Security Council, but it was blocked there. The Russians and Chinese threatened to veto, and the Africans did not stand up.
I think few of us ever expected to have to read a report such as the one you've compiled. The idea that starvation of masses of people is a weapon of war is surely the sickest testament to where we are in the 21st century.
It is a terribly dismal verdict on where we stand. And there have been attempts to raise the profile of this issue of starvation. The UN Security Council 3 years ago passed a resolution in which it said the use of hunger as a weapon of war may be a war crime. And yet the United Nations seems to be unable to act on its own resolution. And I think it is unspeakable if the international community is not able to act to stop this.
Alex de Waal, I hate to end on a note which is still so uncertain as to what happens in the future, but thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the Ethiopian embassy told us the facts on the ground are entirely detached from the situation painted in the report, which deliberately ignores the fact that the TPLF callously started the brutal attack on the northern command of the Ethiopian Defense Forces just before the harvest season. It should be made clear that 1.8 million people in Tigray were already living on safety net programs over the last 2 decades. Furthermore, recent events such as the locust infestation, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the TPLF's warmongering have exacerbated the food security situation in the region. In addition, the Eritrean embassy here in London sent us a statement saying they strongly condemn all attempts to besmirch the good name of the Eritrean army and Eritrea itself.